Hey viewers, my name's Cara, and this week we are sharing a favorite piece of poetry or liturgy from our paths. This is a topic that I came up with probably over a year ago when I first started asking the team members to come up with some of our own topics so we could fill in the blanks when there were no viewer-suggested topics at the time. So this topic has been sitting on a list for a long time, just waiting for a time that it could be used. So I stuck it in this month, not planning ahead. So I want to walk you through the process that I went through today, trying to plan what I would say and what I would share, and coming to what I now realize is a very powerful connection that I am extremely grateful for today. My thought process was, well, I could definitely share the Wiccan Read, because that's something that a lot of people know, but I feel like a lot of people don't know the full version of it if you're not Wiccan, if you haven't necessarily looked it up, and there are multiple versions of it. And then I thought, well, as a newly found reclaiming witch in the past few years, growing my connections with the reclaiming tradition of witchcraft, I would love to share with you the Charge of the Star Goddess, which is such a powerful poem and piece of liturgy, if you will, that I connect with. So yeah, I was like, cool, I could share that. And then I thought, well, let me go back through my Book of Shadows, really more like my grimoire, the thing that I keep my reference type stuff in, which is this unicorn journal here that I started back when I started my path when I was like 11 or 12 years old. And I cut and pasted things into the front and back covers. Poems. So for example, the Wiccan Read is the back cover, one version of the Wiccan Read, of course, because people write different versions. And the front cover is the Witch's Creed. So I thought, oh, maybe I could share that because it's kind of interesting. It has a lot of really powerful symbolism in the language. But then I thought, well, I'll have to go through this discussion of how I don't really agree with a lot of the things that it says anymore, because it's very focused on masculine and feminine duality, whereas now I see things as more of a spectrum. So there's definitely a video in that, and there's definitely a lot of discussion to be had. But I kept going. I kept looking through, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll share one of my original poems that I wrote about my relationship with the goddess, and that I've never shared with anyone before. However, I'm not going to do that, because then I noticed one of the first things that I copied down, that I hand wrote in at the time when I started, this was my Book of Shadows, where I would write reflections about my newfound Wiccan path, and then it gradually became a grimoire over time. One of the first things that I copied in here was from the Pagan Pride Project, and I started my path really around like 2003, when I was 12 going on 13 is when I formally started studying and started writing things down in this book, right? So this was shortly after the death of Tempest Smith. So when I was first doing my research on paganism and witchcraft, I found the Pagan Pride Project website. I found this statement that they had that was, I remember Tempest Smith. So I want to read this to you, because this is one of the first things that I wrote in this book. So it says, Tempest Smith, and I swear to you, I did not realize this before today, before I sat down to do the video, died February 20th, 2001, Lincoln Park, Michigan. So this is the anniversary. I remember Tempest Smith. I remember that it's never right to make fun of someone's beliefs. I remember that sticks and stones can break my bones, but names are words of power that can wound the soul. I remember that many mocked and one died. I remember Tempest Smith. I remember that it takes all types to make a world. I remember that nature likes biodiversity. This is true of beliefs and ideas as well. I remember that I make a better witness to my own beliefs by simply living them, not belittling others. I remember Tempest Smith. And I remember that another person's belief or non-belief is just as sincerely held as my own. I remember to have the courage to say, hey, that's not right, when I see someone being ridiculed. And the next time I am tempted to go along with the crowd and tease someone who is different, I will remember Tempest Smith. because what is remembered lives. I didn't even read the date on that when I first looked back over it, and I went online to Google Tempest Smith, because I remember that at the time I read this, there was just a vague explanation that Tempest was a young pagan who had committed suicide after being ridiculed for years about her beliefs. So today I went and looked, and I found an article from the Wild Hunt that they published in 2014 when the Tempest Smith Foundation was ended, basically. So a couple years after Tempest's death, her mothers started a foundation, and they started educating people about paganism and different beliefs, and also speaking out against bullying all around their area, and especially in the school where Tempest had gone to school. And so I did not know, back at the time that I wrote this, that Tempest had 2 lesbian mothers and was teased about that a lot. I did not know that she was teased about her mother's weight. One of her mothers had problems with her weight over the years, and they teased Tempest about that. And then later, when Tempest got into kind of a gothic style, liked to wear black, and started, more expressing her interest in paganism, which one of her mothers states in the article, which I will share, there's a link below, from the Wild Hunt, that her mother said she had kind of always had, and she had talked about just having this knowledge of the goddess and always wanting to give thanks to the goddess. And they were not a pagan family, but her mothers did research about it and learned about it, and I think it's Annette in the article who says, I read about it and I was okay with it, because I realized this was a lot of the same tenets that I had learned as a hippie child. She said she was raised hippie, basically, so she gets it. Realizing that it's a lot of the same views within a different religious construct. And I feel like that's a lot of the way that my mother became okay with a lot of the things that I was learning about, because she realized these are basic concepts that we actually agree upon, but I view them through a different lens than she does. So I was reading all this and just thinking more and more, I should share this. And then when I came up here to actually start recording, something in my head went, wait a second, didn't it happen in February? What was the date? And then I went back downstairs to look at it, because I still did not realize until I actually just read it out loud to you that I had the date written in here. So I went back downstairs to my computer to look it up, and sure enough, February 20th is the anniversary of Tempest Smith's death. So, this past week on Valentine's Day, my ancestors from my family very strongly reached out to me and, had a lesson for me, a different lesson about Valentine's Day and about love and what it means to come from love. And today, I definitely feel like Tempest reached out to me and said, share my story today. Because, I could have shared any of the numerous poems I was psyched about. I thought I was going to talk about the Charge of the Star Goddess, and then I was like, maybe I'll actually share one of my original poems. Like, yeah, this can be okay. And then it was like, no, you have to go here, you have to look these up, you have to look at her pictures again. And realizing that I haven't thought about Tempest in so long, but when I was 11, when Tempest died, I was 10 going on 11, and she was 12, and I was just beginning my path. Tempest would be 30 this year in September. She would be 29 right now. She's only 2 years older than me. And just realizing, thinking back to how important that statement from the Pagan Pride Project, I remember Tempest Smith, how important that was to me first starting my path and aligning myself with this anti-bullying, accepting people's points of view. All of this was so much a part of the initial introduction to my path as a pagan and as a witch for me. And just thinking who I've grown into now and all the work that I do surrounding justice and tolerance and understanding and educating people about our paths and, the pagan perspective here, and us sharing our views and showing that even though we disagree on certain things, we do things differently, we worship different gods, we celebrate different holidays, whatever, we're still friends and we can work together, and we're all part of the same larger community. Really kind of just hit me hard to realize that I haven't thought about Tempest in so many years. So, thank you, Tempest, for reaching back out. I'm definitely thinking about you a lot today, and I am printing out one of my favorite pictures that is available of Tempest online so I can add her to my Path's ancestor work. And I just trying to shove aside the guilty part, the feeling bad for not having thought about her in a while, and just the gratitude that she showed back up for me today, and just move forward from here. Move forward, right? That's what. So I remember Tempest Smith. And I remember what she meant to me when I was first starting my path, and I am so grateful for the even deeper knowledge that I have about her life and what she went through, and her family, and what her mothers went through because of the article in The Wild Hunt, which again, the link is in the description. Please go read it if you would like to read more about it. Thanks very much for watching. I will see you next week, and until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.